Before we move on to our next speaker, I will be presenting my next co-host, which will be presenting the afternoon speakers for this event, Lee Steinke. Lee is a geophysicist and business executive with a track record of delivering hundreds of millions in value through leadership of science strategy and operations. Her career spans Fortune 100 to a small nonprofit organizations, and she was most recently on the executive leadership team of a $1 billion PE-backed energy company. Lee chairs the advisory board for the Rocky Mountain Association of Geologists and volunteers at Space Foundation on a program for the United Nations Office of Outer Space Affairs. She holds a bachelor's degree from UNC Chapel Hill, a master's from Yale, and an MBA from Wharton. Hi, Lee.
Hi, Leo. Thank you so much for that nice introduction. Dr. Egbert Edelbroek is the CEO of SpaceBorn United, a biotechnology company that researches and enables the conditions for human reproduction in space. His interest in helping humans become a multi-planetary species accelerated shortly after he decided to become a sperm donor in 2010. Learning about assisted reproductive technology, or ART, inspired him to explore how to re-engineer existing IVF technology for application in space, which could allow for the first human babies to be conceived and born in space. Dr. Egbert earned his PhD in courage development in organizations, and he just may have applied that courage to his choice of career. Dr. Egbert, you have the screen.
Thank you so much, Lee, for the warm introduction. Can everybody see and hear me?
You look great.
Perfect. Let me share the screen. Thank you for the warm introduction, and let's talk about reproduction beyond Earth. So what's going on in space? I think most of you have been following the news recently. A lot of activity around Mars from different countries, different agencies, different corporations preparing for even more activities around the Moon and Mars. I think throughout history, people have always felt this natural urge to explore new worlds, and it led us to find new places to settle. And as a global community, we continue to grow and evolve by exploring the unknown. So this is interesting to find new places, but also for benefits to humanity on Earth. I think most of you are familiar with the different benefits that space exploration is providing for a better life on Earth. But today's changing world requires to keep pushing the boundaries of our imagination and our technology. So that would create more possible futures to choose from. But there's more. Why should we reproduce beyond Earth? It's also to safeguard future generations. The different scientists from all the renowned agencies and institutions, they repeatedly warn us for different threats and increasing threats to human life on Earth. And it's not just about climate change. It's not just about rapidly increasing extinction rates. It's also about pandemics that we experience right now. And we also are not sure that in the next few hundred years, there will never be a moment that there will be a nuclear threat. And even a lot earlier, in a few decades, artificial intelligence might become dangerous. So there are many reasons why we should become a multi-planetary species. My personal view on this is that as a former courage development researcher, I like to help humanity to expand the human comfort zone. But of course, I couldn't, I also included this interesting quote from Carl Sagan. I have nothing much to add to this great quote, but I wanted to share it with you. So also these big ambitions of becoming multi-planetary are part of the International Space Exploration Group, as you see. But there is a problem. There is one crucial element that is missing. Because obviously we also need to learn how to reproduce beyond Earth. And this challenge is very difficult. It appears very difficult because it's an ethically delicate subject, and that's difficult to address by space agencies and also by large corporations. Mainly because spending taxpayer money on these delicate matters is a real challenge. It doesn't work. The alternating political focus is not helping also. This is a very long-term project. It takes a few decades to really learn how to reproduce in space in all the stages of reproduction. So it's not working if Obama is focusing on Mars and then Trump is focusing on the moon, or vice versa, etc. So it doesn't work to focus on the short-term goals, what politicians need to do. Fortunately, agencies like NASA explicitly encourage focused companies like ourselves to address this challenge. So we, as a life science, research and biotech company, are positioned well to address this challenge. So what do? We do three things. Oh, by the way, this beautiful building that you're looking at, this UFO-shaped office building, is a place where we rent some of our offices to coordinate our research in the city of Eindhoven in the Netherlands. So we do three things. We research the conditions for human reproduction in space. We translate the outcomes into mission architecture, and we're also working on this with execution partners. And the third thing is we translate the outcomes into designs for our biomedical equipment that is required for these missions. Let me go really quickly through the different research areas that this implies. Of course, we have to deal with biomedical challenges and with space technology matters. And of course, this is an ethically delicate subject, so we also deal with ethical and legal challenges. So reproduction is not just one thing. It consists of different stages. And our research and our mission designs focus on the very first and the very last stage of reproduction. So the first is conception in low Earth orbit. Conception actually also the first 5 days of embryo development. But our name, SpaceBorn United, is also, of course, referring to the last stage, childbirth in space. There are many other stages of reproduction, and we also monitor relevant trends that can eventually help us to design additional mission designs. We're mainly focusing on monitoring the developments around artificial wombs and cryogenic solutions to protect reproductive organs during the long travel to, for example, Mars. But our main focus, I think 80% of our focus is around conception and early embryo development. So how does that work? We did not invent everything ourselves, of course. There's a lot of valuable work that has already been done by many renowned research institutions like NASA, ESA, of course, JAXA, many others. These are just a few examples. I'm not going in all the details here, but you can imagine a lot of valuable work has been done the last few decades. So what we do is focusing on IVF in space, or in other words, assisted reproductive technology in space. And we are dealing with several challenges in a mission like this. So of course, embryos are designed to function in Earth gravity. And we want to learn what happens to embryos and their development if we adjust the gravity levels, for example, to the Mars level or the moon level. We have to deal with radiation protection because embryos are used to a protective atmosphere on Earth, etc. In this mission, we also have to deal with logistical challenges because the freshly harvested female reproduction cells, they will only remain fertile for about 7 to 8 hours. So within this time, we need to harvest them And we need to make sure they get on board our satellites and go into low Earth orbit, all within 7 to 8 hours. So that requires, for example, very late access to the payload, which is unusual, of course. And we are working with a recoverable biosatellite, so we also need to recover the payloads, the cell samples. And we are remotely controlling a life support system, which comes with challenges of itself. So we are working with existing IVF technology, and we re-engineer this for application in low Earth orbit. You can imagine in a normal IVF clinic, these devices like the embryo incubator, which is our focus, these devices are never designed to be optimized for volume or mass or energy consumption and so on. So that's what we do. And we also add a few crucial functionalities. So as I was talking about artificial gravity, we want to learn what is the minimum required gravity level for healthy embryo development. So we need to enable this by making adjustable artificial gravity possible. We also protect the cell samples for the re-entry to Earth. All the vibrations and the gravity peaks are not very healthy for young embryos. So we pause the development by cryogenic technology to protect them against these hazards. So our key technologies are based on IVF on a chip and microfluidic technology to make all of the existing IVF applications a lot smaller. We use micro 3D printed biocassettes that I will show you in a few seconds. And we, as I mentioned, we use cryopreservation to protect them. So here you get an initial design where the actual conception in space will happen. You can see a disk and the size of the disks, which have the different containers and the different fluids that are part of the embryology process, part of the conception process. And it's all made very small to fit in these disks. And we stack several disks on top of each other in the actual mission, put them in our artificial gravity generator and the rest of our medical device to get it on board, for example, the Launcher 1, the Virgin Orbit launch system. And if you look at the mission, I will not go into all the details, but you can imagine how a mission with the Cosmic Girl and the Launcher 1 will work during the launch phase, the operational phase, which is about 5 days. And then after the embryos are frozen in cryo stage, they return back to be recovered and to be examined in IVF clinics. So this is the same actually with all the details. And I think I should leave it at this, looking at the time. But if anyone wants to see more of these details, feel free to ask for this presentation. We started 5 years ago, as Lee also explained. Initially, it started with my curiosity being a donor for an IVF clinic. And then all the experts joined to find solutions for reproduction in space. Let me skip the details of this slide. Of course, I'm not doing this just by myself. We have a lot of experts on the different domains. We have a core team that covers most of these areas, and we have a lot of experts in our network that are supporting us on all these different areas. Including people who did their PhD research on reproduction in space, and world experts in cryopreservation. But let's not go in all the details. So our execution consortium that we are forming You see a few examples that take care of the pre-launch segments and the medical examinations afterwards, to take care of all the research and the mission architecture from all the different areas. So SpaceBorn United, I mentioned before, we're also looking at a mission of childbirth in space. Many people think we mean by this that we also take care of pregnancy in space, but that's absolutely not the case. Humanity is not ready for that yet from a biomedical perspective. So this is just an artist impression of how it might look like in 15 to 20 years, depending on many developments. But our experts believe that it is feasible, and we're actually also looking at, for example, mission designs with parabolic flights, where we can also study these challenges in microgravity. We're looking at spacecraft with comfortable G profiles. So the G peaks will always stay under 2 Gs or even under 1.5 Gs in this Dream Chaser. Now they have the cargo version, but they also have a personnel version. And this would actually be a spacecraft that would enable safe childbirth in space, if you ask our experts. This is a lot of details. I will not go into these. As I mentioned, we work with space engineering challenges, biomedical challenges, and ethical and legal challenges. Yes, the media is interested in what we do, and we are very grateful because it's not just scientific added value, but it's also seen, our missions are also seen as steps in human evolution. For the first time in history, human babies will be conceived and born in space, and the media is really interested in everything that's happening for us, and we're grateful to have podia like this. And this is expensive, and we are still looking for additional funding on the long term. The large agencies are interested in what we do, and it's crucial technology, challenges that they cannot address, as I explained. But mainly space life science research centers are interested in everything that we learn regarding partial gravity. There's so many data gaps that we can fill, so that's valuable for them. What we do is also expected to accelerate developments for the IVF sector on Earth. So that's also a source of funding for us. And a special one, that is the upcoming Space Nations. Let me zoom in on that one. We've been receiving requests from different upcoming Space Nations that try to be able to claim this unique achievement in space. Some nations would like the first woman on the moon. Others want to put, of course, the first people on Mars. But there are also countries that show serious interest in being able to say, we enabled the first conception in space or the first childbirth in space. So that's fine for us, as long as if this will be the funding source for us for the larger missions, the long-term missions, that's fine for us, as long as this country will support high standards of a moral compass, because of course this is about pregnant women going into space with a medical team, and that needs a high moral standards. We also monitor the future of reproduction in space. There are different interesting trends that help us to design additional missions. This one is not the most interesting. I think many of you have seen this image of a lamb in an artificial womb. We are working with a partner in the Netherlands, with Professor Oei, who is working on the human version of this artificial womb. Today, it's used to improve the lung development for premature infants that are born, well, a few weeks too early. But in the future, it might provide an interesting alternative for the radiation-damaged organs during long space journeys. And the Next Nature network that is managed by Professor van Mensvoort with the Reproductopia approach, they are actually looking way beyond what we are able to do today. They're even exploring options where animal wombs would allow human fetuses to develop, to name just an exotic example. Very relevant for us is very recent research results from Dr. Hanna in Israel. Until now, all biologists know that embryos can develop outside of the uterus only for 5 days. That's also the reason why our mission for conception in space is a 5 to 6 days mission. But with the outcomes of this research, we might be able to extend our mission and learn a lot more about embryo development in different gravity levels. So this is the Weizmann Institute, where Dr. Hanna is doing this with his group. Looking at the time, I think I should allow for time for questions. And as we look at it, this is a small step for a baby, but a giant baby step for mankind. So let me stop sharing the screen and see what questions I can answer.
It's a really fascinating topic. We'll look for questions in the chat, but were you surprised when you first started out at the amount of buy-in that you were able to get from your advisors, from the various funding and support sources you mentioned in this topic at this time?
Yeah, it is. This is definitely. I've been learning a lot, and a lot of the reasons why this research is so important. I was actually especially amazed by the different arguments for the IVF sector, for IVF clinics, and of course for the partial gravity research. But I didn't think about geopolitical space race motives, but this might very well be a great source of funding in a few months.
Yeah. We have a question from Inara. What are the 3 largest roadblocks to your ongoing work?
Yes, Inara, thank you. That's an interesting question. Finding the balance between organizations that are interested in providing funding and keeping. So this is about this same geopolitical thing. The space race is the upcoming space nations. They continue to push, and someone wants to be the first.
Yeah. Looks like Dr. Egbert may have frozen.
Oh,
we lost you for just a minute. You might want to start your comment there.
So it's difficult to find the right balance between accepting a nation or other wealthy funding partner that wants to be the first, because that pushes the moral standards that we want to work with. That's actually one of our main roadblocks. Other roadblocks, well, we have technical challenges. The logistics of embryo recovery. and the late access challenge. We are still fine-tuning the solutions. This is, you don't want to, again here, we want to treat the participants with all the respect and all the care that you would expect, but still you have to work with a very ambitious time slot. We just have 6 hours actually that we work with, and then conception needs to have taken place. So harvesting on Earth and conception in space, all in just 6 hours. But we think it's feasible. Let me keep it at these two main challenges, if that's all right.
That's great. Robert Uplinger just made a comment. Immunological and antibody maternal communications are a huge stopper for mechanical fetal development. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, to be honest, this is not my expertise. So I will be happy to ask one of our experts about this, because they are convinced that we can address all of the challenges that there are. It's more a matter of if the larger public is ready for what we want to do.
Right.
It seems like a very educated question, and I want to find the answer to it, but it's not my expertise to do so. But
And one quick final question. Some of the images that you showed were reminiscent of some movies. Can you talk about whether Hollywood has called for you to be an advisor on film production related to this, or the other way around? Did you draw any inspiration from science fiction?
We didn't. Well, we have been approached by large Hollywood type organizations, because yes, this will be a media circus, especially when we're talking about childbirth in space. It is perceived as a step in human evolution. It's not like landing on the moon for the first time or on Mars, but still spectacular, of course. And television production companies are interested in this. And what was the question again? Oh.
Well, just drawing inspiration. Did you draw any inspiration from science fiction? Was the other part of the question.
Well, we do in terms of the different trends that we monitor. For example, the artificial wombs and even interstellar seed ships, where children will be born inside the spacecraft and raised by an artificial intelligence kind of robot. And we believe that will be possible in, well, let's say 50 to 100 years. I hope this is answering the question to some extent.
Yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate your talk here today, and you can certainly continue with any further questions in the chat.